गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं यत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। जय गुरुदेव। This promise is what I want all of you to remember. This is the basis for our study. I am rising up this nation to send forth my word. It is for the world and not for themselves that they arise. They means Indians, the people living in India. I am giving them freedom for the service of the world. This is what was the real essence of the Alipur Ashram sadhana. So all these what we are reading is for service of the world. Next. So this is what we were discussing yesterday. Generally what happens when we come to the so-called spiritual sadhanas, there is always a defect at the center. The intellect has been interested. We are reading it because we are interested. The heart is attracted towards it. The will has strung itself to the effort, but the whole nature has not been taken captive by the divine. This is what we should aspire for. It is not just the few hours which we spend in studying these things, but your entire life must be an offering to the divine, and then he can mold it. And if there is even a very single defect at the center, the problem is you can go back. We should always remember this point. If you are not progressing, that means you are falling down. Because even if you don't do anything, the world moves on. Or perhaps there is an effort not favored by the whole nature. A decision or turn imposed by an intellectual influence or dictated by personal affection or admiration for someone who is himself consecrated and devoted to the highest. This is the real danger which awaits us. We try to interpret what the Guru has said. One of the greatest mistakes we do in spiritual sadhana is in trying to evaluate what the Guru has written after he is not there to confirm your suppositions. That's the danger with which all spiritual organizations are suffering. Be careful about it. We need not question anything. The life of the Guru is our message. You just follow how he lived. Don't try to interpret. because what he has written is beyond time and space. And don't think that you can understand him in a better way than others. And in integral yoga, this becomes more important because everyone has his own decisions to make. What we can do is we can stick to these principles. I am not talking about this book. I am talking about the principles enunciated in it. It has only acquiesced in the interest, the attraction or the endeavor. This is what we have to understand, whether you are just interested in it or you are going to give your entire life to it. And if you are not giving your entire life, and when I say entire life, it means the mind, the vital, and the physical. All the three must be given to him. There has been an experiment, perhaps even an eager experiment, but not a total self-giving to an imperative need of the soul. It is not the need of us, but the need of the soul or to an unforsakable ideal. But when we read all these things, we become a bit downtrodden. Then why all this? Then remember what it says, even such imperfect yoga has not been wasted, for no upward effort is made in vain. This spirit you should understand. But that does not mean that you should give a small attempts always. Try to surrender completely. But if you can't even do it, it is not in vain. Nahi kalyanakrit kaschit durgatim tatagacchati. That is what Sri Krishna says in Gita. Whoever simply takes a simple step forward, he cannot again go back. He has already entered the path of yoga. It is a question of time only. But that time, if you can really try to understand the meaning of all these three books, but that doesn't mean that you are supposed to read only these three books. I am telling you, at least you read these three books within this week. Three books: The Synthesis of Yoga, The Life Divine, and Savitri. That must be the spirit. Not a casual thing that I will take it up when I get some time. This life must be important, and what you are doing in your day-to-day life is only a necessity designed by your master. The outward life we are living. You remember, you don't think that you are living that life and you are the decision maker in that life. Whether you are a husband or you have some responsibilities, you are a director, you are an actor. I have given you all the 5 lists: the politicians, the businessmen, the scientists, the actors, the teachers, the scientists. All who are working under different categories. We as the students of integral yoga should know that you are there because of the design of the Lord, whom Aurobindo says as the master of the works, the real master of the works. Then all life becomes yoga. But it should not be something what I am telling here and what you are hearing now, and the moment you cross the threshold you are gone. That should not happen. Next, the secret of success in yoga is to regard it not as one of the aims to be pursued in life, but as the one and only aim. Not as an important part of life, but as the whole of the life. This is the mantra which you should repeat daily. And when I say a mantra, I mean it is a mantra. Do it 108 times and see what happens. And I am not joking. This should be the inherent supporting thought of every action, every desire, every thought. In the beginning it may be difficult, naturally. But it won't be difficult if you practice it regularly. The one and only one aim and our whole life is yoga. That is what Sri Aurobindo meant when he said all life is yoga. Next. What is the title? Chapter Self-Surrender in Works, the Way of Gita. The life of human creature, as it is ordinarily lived, is composed of a half-fixed, half-fluid mass of very imperfectly ruled thoughts, perceptions, sensations, emotions, desires, enjoyments, acts, mostly customary and self-repeating, in part only dynamic and self-developing, but all centered around a superficial ego. Now, let us try to understand the yoga of works, how we should do the yoga, the karma yoga. The first is, mostly what we do is customary and self-repeating, they have no value. You always try and be very careful when I am telling it. You should do it as an exercise. You just put a diary or something or a notebook. How many customary and self-repeating acts we do? They are useless for us. And ahara, nidra, bhaya, maidhunancha are the most customary and self-repeating activities which have no value. But they are a must. It doesn't mean that you should not eat and you should not sleep. But you should know they are not dynamic and self-developing. Which are the acts of your day-to-day life which are dynamic and self-developing, you should know. Even when you know this, you remember that is not a yoga of works if it is based on a superficial ego. That means if the work you are doing is because Mr. X or Mr. Y is doing, it is wrong. The name given to you is by nature, by parents. So whatever work you are doing, if Ramakrishna is doing, it is a superficial ego. Do this know the inner being? Is my activities being motivated by the inner being? Certainly not. So, customary and self-repeating, waste. Dynamic and self-developing, if they are based on superficial ego, even then it is a waste, but better than customary and self-repeating. Next. It is for this meaningful development of consciousness by thought, will, emotion, desire and action experience, leading in the end to a supreme divine self-discovery, that man, the mental being, has entered into the material body. This is the seed in which the tree of yoga of works develops. This you should remember. Thought, your thoughts, your will. Unfortunately, many of us don't have any will. Will means you do or die. And many times if you can't do it, we just sidetrack and say we will have an alternative. And will never has an alternative. So we have thoughts, no will. Emotion, I don't think so. Emotion means which motivates you to act. Then you have to put a question mark whether you have any emotions or not. Desires, we have a lot of desires and very high sounding desires. Action, no action. If the higher the desire which you sound, the lesser the action towards it. You got the point what I am telling? I want to get a first class. Every student has a desire. But does he act according to that? No. Every example I am giving, you should put to yourself. Don't think about a student and that he has no action in his desire. How many of our desires we really put into action and experience, leading in the end to a supreme divine self-discovery. So all these, your thoughts, your will, your emotion, your desire, your action and experience. Out of them, the only thing is a very little desire comes into our experience. Only desire, not even thoughts. That man, the mental being, has entered into the material body. So this is the problem. You have to put your thoughts towards divine self-discovery. Put your will towards divine self-discovery. Put your emotion towards divine self-discovery. Your desire, action, experience. Now, how many of us can say that even when we are reading this, we know that we are reading this for divine self-discovery? We have our own egoistic approaches. And I am not meaning in a negative sense. I am meaning it that this is not the cause for which we are doing all this. But Sri Aurobindo very specifically says, this material body has been given only for the self-discovery. Next. First, to disinherit desire and no longer accept the enjoyment of desire as the ruling human motive. Self-explanatory, many of our desires, they rule us. So we should not allow those desires, at least taking a form of action. Let the desire be there, let it not be acted upon. The mental being too must undergo a new birth and a transfiguring change. This we will read later. Our confused and embarrassed, ego-centered, small motivated will and action. You see the adjectives he has given, and if you don't have those adjectives, you have to develop those adjectives. First of all, we should be embarrassed. You know what we mean by embarrassed? We should feel shy because we are ego-centered. Small motivated. You don't have a large goal of serving the humanity of the world. That is what Sri Krishna said. That your first motive as an Indian, especially as a man who is interested in yoga, to be of service to the world. But we have only small motivations. Will and action must cease and make room for the total working of a swiftly powerful, lucidly automatic, divinely moved and guided, unfallen force. There must be implanted and activated in all our doings a supreme, impersonal, unfaltering and unstumbling will in spontaneous and untroubled unison with the will of the divine. Next. We shall find that our action does not correspond with our inner light. This is, for few months, this is the problem. What we do does not correspond with our inner light. It doesn't matter. When a small child is trying to learn to walk, his only goal is to walk. He falls, gets up. He falls, gets up, he walks. When a child is learning to walk, he has no goals for his walking. He has no goal that he will reach that place or this place or this place. The only goal is he should walk. What does it mean? When he wants to walk, he should be able to walk. If he does not want to walk, he should not walk. Similarly, the inner light first trains you. That is where we have to take the help of all the scriptures, all the 7 stages of Raja Yoga, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana. We will come to that. Because in the process of learning, it is only the fundamental aspect of our sadhana is to control your thoughts. If you don't want to think, you should not think. If you want to think, you should think. Desires. If you want to have a desire, you should have a desire. If you don't want to have a desire, you should not have a desire. The same with the body. Your body must be tuned with the thoughts and desires what you have. These three practices are the basis of the three yogas. The yoga of works, which is known as karma yoga. You should know the spirit behind your actions. That is karma yoga. And what should be the spirit? Understanding the Supreme and surrendering to the Supreme. So our physical body should be in such a perfect shape and condition that it should become a perfect tool. Similarly, the desire body. Similarly, the mental body. These practices you have to practice. You have to develop your own systems which helps you. In Karma Yoga, the first 6 chapters of Gita gives you a lot. Select anyone. You are not worried of the results. Next, from 7th to 12th chapter, the divine devotion, Bhakti Yoga. You develop any one of those. And then you have in the last 13th to 18th chapter, Kshetra and Kshetrajna, the knowledge. That you cannot miss. You just can't say that I need not read it, because even if you read the entire Gita, you need somebody who knows about it to tell you what is good for you. And luckily for us, we have a very direct, pointed guidance in this book for all these yogas. Now we are going ahead with Karma Yoga, how your actions must be performed. Next. A change of inner consciousness and nature. This is most important. In the beginning, that have to be accepted for some time. The difficulties when you are practicing the Karma Yoga, the difficulties you come when you are practicing the Bhakti Yoga, the difficulties you have when you are practicing the Jnana Yoga, they will come for some time. But you have to practice them. And you have to also practice the Raja Yoga. And you have to also practice the Hatha Yoga. There is no exemption for it. In integration, we just don't leave anything, we integrate everything. And when you integrate everything, you should know that the Hatha Yoga is very important for the physical body and the nervous body. And if this is not in correct tune, what is the use of the highest flights of imagination? For the previous sadhakas, that was good, because they went there, liberated, gone. They were not worried of what is going to happen to this world. But an integral sadhaka goes there and brings it down to the physical plane. Then your physical plane must be perfect. And what is your physical plane? Your body and nervous system. So asanas and pranayama automatically becomes a must. And after that, we have this still evolving mental body. The Annamaya and Pranamaya koshas are completely evolved. But our mind has not evolved. But when we say this, we feel that probably nature has the role of developing the mind in humanity. Sri Aurobindo says it is wrong. It has already developed your mental body. What you are now saying is a recoil because of some defect in your mental bodies. Because if you take the most savage individual in the world who does not know about any civilization, who does not know about languages, you can imagine such a savage man, is it not? Somewhere in the African jungles, who doesn't know about this modern world. But you accept in principle that if you bring him to that cities and train him for 10 years, he can become a scientist. He can become an engineer. So what does it mean? The savage has become a savage because of some defect in his mental nature in previous higher evolutionary stage, which he has to correct now as a savage. I think you could understand what it is. The same thing to all of us. So we are here not to develop the mental body, but to correct the mental defects which we have inherited from our previous developments of the mental body, and for some of us almost to the over mind level. So that is the guarantee which Sri Aurobindo gives, that your sadhana is waste. If you have passed BSc and you think that you have not studied 10th class and you start reading 10th class books, who is at fault? We are at fault. We have forgotten that we have reached that level. Why we have forgotten? Because there is a recoil. And nature is always right. You remember that principle. So that shows that all of us, and when I say all of us, in humanity, all of us, those who were before us and those who are going to come after us, have always evolved a mental being, Manomaya Purusha. And that Manomaya Purusha was supposed to train himself for the descent. But there is a fault, there is a defect. That defect, Sri Aurobindo says, is individually different from man to man. That is why from the mental level onwards, your integral sadhana becomes diversified, depending upon your defect. But before reaching that, at least you must have reached the samadhi state. And I guarantee you that those who have studied up to 10th class have reached the Savitarka Samadhi state as given in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. When I come to the chapter Samadhi, I will prove it. That anyone who has passed the 10th class exam is above Savitarka Samadhi. Then what are the 3 steps for him to remain according to the Samadhi? Nirvitarka Samadhi, Savichara Samadhi and Nirvichara Samadhi. And many of the people who are interested in yoga, whether our yoga or their yoga or any yoga, because wherever you have an inherent aspiration towards the divine, whether you are a Muslim or a Christian or a Buddhist or someone XYZ, you have reached Nirvichara Sthiti also. Nirvichara Samadhi also. So when I find people trying to do all those nonsensical experiments for Nirvitarka Samadhi and Savitarka Samadhi, you are wasting your time. Because we do not have a very clear-cut definition of what Samadhi is. And later, we will get the real picture of Samadhi in Sri Aurobindo's own words. Next. The Gita at its cryptic close may seem by its silence to stop short of that solution for which we are seeking. What is the solution? What is the goal of the mental body? Where the desire body and the physical body are completely controlled. It passes at the borders of the highest spiritual mind and does not cross them into the splendors of the supramental light. This is from where we have recoiled since 5,000 years. And this should give us a great boost. Because if you have already been there, the only thing is, you must be able to say along with Arjuna, Nashto Mohaha, Smrutir Labdhva, I remember that I have passed all these stages. Tat Prasadat Mayachyuta, and remember, until this helps, you can't remember it. That is why he says, Nashto Mohaha, Smrutir Labdhva, Tat Prasadat Mayachyuta, Sthitosmi Gata Sandeha. Now I don't have any doubts. And where there is no doubt, there is faith. So faith is a state of where you have no doubts. When you have some faith, you don't have any doubt. I remember a story that a newly married couple were going in a ship. Suddenly, the ship entered a typhoon, a tufan. Everybody was running here and there, here and there, here and there. And this gentleman, the husband, was sitting quietly and trying to read because it is lurking and chirping, therefore he is not able to read, but he is trying to read some novel. His wife became very angry. You see, all these fellows are dancing and jumping and doing all this, and you are just trying to read a novel. He heard for some time and he took a dagger, put it on his wife's neck and said, "Are you afraid?" She said, "No." She laughed and said, "Throw away that knife first. What nonsense you are doing." He said, "You are not afraid?" "No, I am not afraid." "Why?" "Because I have faith in you. You won't kill me. The same faith I have in the God. The weather though so turbulent, I have faith in God. So what should you do? Sit and read a novel." Not saying that you have faith in God and then abusing Him for what you are not getting. Got the point? And at its secret of dynamic and not only static, identity with inner presence is its highest mystery of absolute surrender to the divine guide, Lord and inhabitant of our nature is the central secret. So the central Purusha, the central being, what Sri Aurobindo calls our Jivatma, and then the soul and the Chaitya Purusha, 3 in 1, is what he says, the divine guide. And that has been revealed in Gita also. But how that presence can be brought down is not revealed. Free expression out of a supreme inward silence is the secret. This, whatever I have written it in these capitals, are mantric in nature. This is our goal. You go on repeating it. You should express yourself physically. You should express yourself vocally. You should express yourself in thoughts, but in silence. Next. The mind rides on the swirl of natural forces, balances on a poise between several possibilities, inclines to one side or another, settles and has the sense of choosing, but it does not see. It is not even dimly aware of the force behind that has determined its choice. Now, this is the best exercise you can have in your day-to-day life. You choose every time. Whenever you choose something, are you aware of the force behind which has determined its choice? Think over those things. This is an exercise to be practiced. Any choice, somebody offers you a Coke, and you say, "No, I don't want a Coke, I want Pepsi." This differentiation is not because there is a swirl of natural forces in you and you think that your desires are controlling that particular action, but there is something behind it which has determined its choice. If you can be aware of that force, half of the battle is won. Behind these petty instrumental actions of the human will, there is something vast and powerful and eternal that oversees the trend of inclination, presses on the turn of the will. This is most important. Every little thing we do is based on will. If you don't want it, you can't do it. Am I clear about that? You do because you will it to do it. But unfortunately, we don't know what willing is. That is what in our puja vidhana and others we say as the sankalpa. The sankalpa is the divine will. He has decided that this process must go on. The only plus point we as human beings have is to we can speed up the goal towards which you are going. You just can't change the steps of evolution. But you can grow it very fast, and a child's birth is the best example of this force of evolution. 200 years back, a child was born. The entire evolution was behind him. Now, after 200 years, a child is born. Don't you think that behind this child, the 200 years extra evolution is there? Am I clear about that? So, this is a normal time scale evolution. But suppose you can speed up the evolution. Then what happens? You who were born with this present stage of evolution behind you can have the entire goal of evolution behind you. Then what happens? It becomes yoga. Another birth. Am I clear about the birth? Behind every birth, the evolution up to that point is there. If you have a 6th generation computer and a 1st generation computer, the evolution behind the 1st generation computer is only up to 1940s. And now you have a new computer, the evolution is up to 2000. But now you suppose you can evolve in a very fast rate. That becomes yoga for a new birth in evolution. That is what he says. Behind these petty instrumental actions of the human will, there is something vast and powerful and eternal that oversees the trend of inclination and presses on the turn of the will. And if you are interested, you can keep it in capital. The turn of the will is a very beautiful word with so many possibilities in it. You turn the will, you turn yourself to any direction. Next. This is the power or presence meant by the Gita when it speaks of the Lord within the heart of all existences, who turns all creatures as if mounted on a machine by the illusion of nature. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hruddeshirjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. If you allow nature, the maya will control you. The evolution proceeds as it should proceed. But if you are a yogi, the actions must differ. The yoga of works, how you do the works, must differ in their orientation, in their turn. Am I clear about the word turn? You have to turn. Ordinarily, he has too much in him of the obscure earth inertia, and this earth inertia can be controlled only by asana and pranayama. These are my words, they are not Sri Aurobindo's. What I have given in brackets, Sri Aurobindo has not told them. But the earth inertia, you can conquer only by asanas and pranayamas. And a troubled, ignorant animal force, you can control this animal life force in us by jnana, karma, bhakti and Raja Yogas to be a soul of light and bliss, or even a mind of the harmonious will and knowledge. So that is where I am trying to tell you that you just can't neglect asanas, pranayamas, jnana yoga, karma yoga, bhakti yoga and Raja Yoga. But not only you have to utilize them with the turn of your will towards the supreme goal. Next. In the field of action, desire takes many forms. We are coming to the crux of yoga of works, karma yoga. But the most powerful of all its vital selves craving or seeking is after the fruit of our works. We always desire the fruit of the works. And you have to turn your will in such a way that you do the work as if it is the most important thing in the world, but you are not worried about the fruit of the actions. It comes by practice. It is quite possible. Therefore, the first rule of action we are reading, you know the chapter's heading? We are reading about, you remember? Or you have already forgotten? The yoga of works. So, throughout, we are going to learn about how to act. So, what is the first rule? It is known as the Nishkama Karma. Karmanye vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalaheturbhu. This is important for us. Mate sangostva karmani. When you are not interested in the fruit of the work, what happens? You are not interested in doing the work also. You don't want to act. Be careful of that. Mate sango akarmani. Nishkama karma does not mean that should become akarmanya. You have to act very fast and at such a rate to capture the entire scale of millennium of years of evolution. And you should not be worried about the fruits of nature. A contradiction, but probably the entire world is a contradiction. And without contradiction, probably we cannot speak. Next. The test is laid out in an absolute equality of the mind and the heart to all results, to all reactions, to all happenings. If good fortune and ill fortune, if respect and insult, if reputation and obloquy, if victory and defeat, if pleasant event and sorrowful event leaves us not only unshaken but untouched, free in the emotions, free in the nervous reactions, free in the mental view, not responding with the least disturbance or vibration in any spot of nature, then we have the absolute liberation to which Gita points us, but not otherwise. So the first formula is Nishkama Karma. The next formula is Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, balance. Balance between all this. Victory or defeat, respect or insult, there must be a balance. So we can have, as Sri Aurobindo has said, the Sanskrit words gives very easily the purport of these. The next is Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. Next. The tiniest reaction is a proof that the discipline is imperfect. Externally you may pose that you have everything under control. But you must be aware that even a tiniest reaction should not come in your desire body or in your mental body. And that some part of us accepts ignorance and bondage as its law and clings still to the old nature. Because until and unless the Nishkama Karma and equality in yoga, Samatvam, this must be the first practicing instruments for the yogi. Are you becoming an expert in Nishkama Karma? Have you with full heart the audacity to say that whatever I am doing is not influencing me? Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. If it influences, still the ignorance is there. Next. Yogasthakuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddha siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Equality, renunciation of all desire for the fruit of our works, action done as a sacrifice to the Supreme Lord of our nature and of all nature. These are the three first Godward approaches in the Gita's way of Karma Yoga. So this is what we have to learn. Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, Nishkama Karma, and in the end, offering it as a sacrifice to the God. And before that, before you can offer anything to the God, it should be a very specialized action. Yogasthak kuru karmani, as he said. A very specialized action. And that is what in Gita it is said. Yogaha karmasu kaushalam. You are not interested in the results. You are not worried about the failure or success, but you should work as if an expert is working. Yogaha karmasu kaushalam. Then only it can be offered as a sacrifice. Next. नेहाभिक्रम नाशोस्ते प्रत्यवायो न विद्यते स्वल्पमप्यस्य धर्मस्य त्रायते महतो भयात्. Now we are trying to practice these three things. What are these three things? Nishkama karma, samatvam yoga uchyate, and yoga karmasu kaushalam. You are practicing. And naturally, when you are practicing it, you can't be perfect in your first attempt. And probably sometimes it may take years. Then here the Lord proves. In this, what in this? When you are practicing this Nishkama karma, when you are trying to be Samatvam, when you are trying to be a Kushala, in this there is no loss of effort, nor is there any transgression. You cannot come down. Even a little of this dharma protects from great fear. So that is a guarantee when you are practicing it, a great hope and faith that there is no recoiling here. In nature there may be a recoil, but in yoga practice there is no recoil. Whatever you practice, even that little iota will be there, and if you don't continue it in this life, you will continue it in the next life. That is the guarantee given. But don't wait for the next life. I am giving only you 6 months. Next. I titled The Sacrifice, the Dry Input, and the Lord of the Sacrifice. This sacrifice is the most important word in Sanatana Dharma. And this Sanatana Dharma, you remember, is not ancient. We call it Sanatana because it was discovered way back. So it is the future Dharma also. You try to remember this point. Later I will come back to it, because if I dwell on that, this chapter will go. So, the yajna part you remember. What is a yajna? Where you offer your action with expertise. If there is no expertise, it cannot be offered to the God. For example, I read a story in my childhood. There was a minister to a king who always used to say that everything that happens is good for us. So whatever happens, he always says it is good for us. So one day what happened, the king was cutting some fruits and his finger was cut and he has to bandage it. The minister was there. He used his normal words. What did he say? Everything is good for us. It is good for you to have your finger cut. He became very angry, the king. He said, put him in jail. I will come back. He was preparing to go for what we call that? Hunting. I will see when I come back that you are beheaded. He went to the hunting and there he fell into the hands of some tantrics and they were about to give him the bali, sacrifice him. And then they saw this cut. And nothing which is pure and perfect can be offered as a sacrifice. So they left him. The king came back. He was very happy. He said, yes, you are right. Whatever happens is good. But I jailed you. What is good there? He said, if you have not jailed me, I would have accompanied you. And when I accompanied you, I don't have any cuts. So I would have been offered as a sacrifice. So whatever happens is good. That spirit you should remember. But this sacrifice, what I am trying to stress is, these three conditions are necessary for yajna. Are very much necessary for yajna. The first thing for a yajna is that you should do it without any desire. Next, samatvam. Whatever happens of the result, you don't worry. You continue the yajna. And third, you should do the yajna in a very specialized way. And because we have forgotten these three fundamentals of yajna, the great science of ritualistic yajna is gone forever. It has to be revived again. That is why, title. he gives 2 more chapters for yajna. Sri Aurobindo talks about ascent of sacrifice in 2 separate chapters. Chapter Ascent 1 and Ascent 2. And you understand now what are the 3? The first is Nishkama Karma Yoga, and it should ascend to equality. And then it should ascend to expertise in actions. Next. The law of sacrifice is the common divine action that was thrown out into the world in its beginning. And what is exactly the law of sacrifice is to limit and correct and gradually to eliminate the errors of an egoistic and self-divided creation. I think it is very clear. That is exactly what a scientist does. What does he do? He limits his experiments, gets a result, changes the limits, what we science we call it as parameters. All of you are able to understand? We are trying to find out a formula for cancer. So we do some experiments. When you are doing this experiment, naturally you cannot do the other experiments. You have limited. But after doing this experiment, you correct the experiments and again practice it. And again there is a limit. This limit and correction gradually eliminate the errors of an egoistic and self-divided creation. The experiments we are doing is to remove the egoistic problems and self-divided orientation in life. This we should remember, the law of karma. What is the most essential thing in Indian way of life, we have completely forgotten. We talk about destiny, but we have forgotten about the prarabdha, sanchita and agami karmas. And we forget that there is a great law of limit and correction, which is important for that particular type of activity. And there we go into the astrology and this and that. If you are interested, you can go to it. It helps a lot. Next. Now you understand what is sacrifice? That has sacrificed itself into the body, into these limitations for a particular experiment. And we are not aware of that experiment. We are living our own lives, in which only the body, the desires and the mind are important, whereas the thoughts, the desires and the body should be used as an experimental instruments, tools. That is the yoga of works. Next. Indeed, sacrifice is imposed, and where need be compelled. You understand this? You are compelled to stay alive in this body. By whom? If you can find him, the real purpose of our activities can understand. Am I able to make you understand? You are forced to live in this body. Many of us don't like this body, but you are forced to live it. Compelled, even from those who do not consciously recognize. Many people who are living, they don't know that they are being compelled to live in that particular body, in that particular post, in that particular liking or disliking environment. But the fact is, you are being compelled. And the entire process of yoga is to know that master of works who is compelling us to be like this. Next, this one. Yajnardhat karma no yatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadardham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Whatever action you do without an intention of sacrifice binds you. So the entire spirit of your actions must be a yajna. Now, again you remember what yajna is. It must have 3 qualities. That is why he said the triune path. First is nishkama karma. Next, you are not affected by the results, samatvam. And third is expertise in doing these actions. Next, when we eat, this yajna spirit, you must have it when you eat also, when you drink also. Now this in break, when you are drinking your cup of water or something, when you eat, We should be conscious that we are giving our food to that presence in us. It must be a sacred offering in a temple, and the sense of a mere physical need or self gratification must pass away from us. Next. Our very inspiration and respiration, mind you, even the way you are breathing. A very difficult taskmaster Sri Aurobindo is. That is easy. You offer the food you are eating, okay, you will remember, swaha, swaha. But what does he say? Our very inspiration and respiration, shwasa, our very heartbeats can and must be made conscious in us as a living rhythm of the universal sacrifice. The way you are breathing, it has three qualities. What is the three qualities? It should be a nishkama karma. Probably it is. Probably, but it is not. But on the outer being, of course, it is a nishkama karma. And then what should you have? You should have a samatvam. What do you mean by samatvam? In anger, your breath rate changes. When you are sleeping, your breath rate changes. You are affected by the desires. But how should be the breath? Equal. Samatvam. And then what should be? You should be an expert in breathing. In 3 days, Sri Aurobindo attained it. He learned how to breathe and his mind was gone. You know that story? I can't say it is a story, it is an incident, a milestone in his life. So your breathing must be a sacrifice if you can breathe like him. You breathe in such a way that your mind will not be there, because there is a very direct link between breath and mind. If you can have a very slow, deep, rhythmic breathing, you conquer your mind. That is what is known as Ajapa Gayatri. Next. All must be done for the divine, all must be directed towards the divine, nothing must be attempted for ourselves as a separate existence. This is the problem. Whatever you are doing, it should be for the divine, not for you. And what we are doing now, even studying this book, is probably for us only. For our interest of gaining knowledge, for our satisfaction of the desire that we could master this book. You understand? It is the orientation that must change. The problem is in the education system. This is my addition, because in our education system, it is the competition which makes you. And when you compete and you don't cooperate, there can be no yoga. Next. These are the two signs, one making our completed conversion and consecration to the Great Christ, and the other, the final acceptance by the divine of our sacrifice. Jai Gurudev. How many slides?